Welcome on into the Chokehold Hour. Guys, we've got a huge weekend in martial arts approaching, and I couldn't be more excited. UFC 305 takes place in Perth, Australia, and obviously, this is a hometown hero type of card. Steve Erceg, Kai Kara-France, Tai Tuivasa, Israel Adesanya. All of the Aussies, whether they were born there or trained there, whatever it is, are fighting on this card in front of the hometown fans, and it's going to breed entertainment. The crowd is going to be electric in Perth. I can guarantee you that. The fights are built to entertain. This card really is built to entertain. You look at Steve Erceg versus Kai Kara-France, two high-level strikers that are going to keep this fight on the feet and bang. Israel Adesanya in the main event. You got Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Tai Tuivasa, a heavyweight clash of the Titans. Like I said, built to entertain. But today we're going to be focusing specifically on the most important and relevant storyline in this whole card. 185-pound gold is on the line as Israel Adesanya fights in his 12th fight in a row with the belt at stake and tries to resume his 5-year reign of terror over the middleweight division. Dricus Du Plessis, the South African, takes on the last stylebender. And just for some backstory, some context, this fight has been brewing for a long, long time now due to an ongoing conflict between the two men, more of a verbal conflict, at least up to this point. If you remember, after Dricus Du Plessis beat Robert Whittaker, Izzy went into the Octagon. They had a face-off, an exchange of words that kind of went viral on social media, and the reason for all of that was DDP coming out and saying, prior to all this, he came out and said to the media, I'm going to be the first one to bring the belt back to Africa. I'm going to be the first real African champ. Now, I would never deny DDP's inherent South Africanness. He was born there. He is an African, absolutely. But you mess with the bull and you get the horns. Israel Adesanya, Francis Ngannou, Kamaru Usman, all of them did actually bring the belt physically back to Africa and are of African heritage, African descent. So not denying DDP's Africanness, so to speak, but the fact that he came out and said that to other people, said that I am more African than you, when that's an inarguable thing. That's not the case. That's where all this beef comes from. And understandably so. Izzy feels, if you just look at the build up to this fight, Izzy, he's speaking in his native tongue towards DDP, saying things like, your father's lack of dedication will bring struggle to your mother, or something like that. Izzy seems to be very in touch culturally for this fight because of the backstory and backlash. Now, when it comes to actual styles and who's going to win, to be honest, I didn't think DDP would get this far in his MMA career. I now know that he is a very, very, very talented fighter. He is much more than just a talking figurehead. He's more than a guy who says he's good. I remember when he knocked out Trevin Giles. That was a nasty, nasty straight punch. You could tell the guy was big, muscular, and packed power in everything he threw, but the technique just never seemed to be there. Yet somehow DDP took his lack of technique and turned it into his greatest strength. This guy beats everybody through the art of the blitz. It's really incredible to watch. He just charges at you like a bull, somewhat irresponsibly, but relatively in control, and throws strike after strike after strike until he has you up against the cage exactly where he wants you, and then he can start to unload. It's what he did in the Robert Whittaker fight. It's what he did in the Sean Strickland fight. DDP, his fight style is rooted in the blitz. And then, of course, he is huge for a middleweight. There is no way he walks around at less than 205. There's no way. If you look at the muscle mass he carries every single time he steps into the octagon, he is massive. So, yeah, DDP uses that size, and it helps him when it comes to grappling a lot. We saw how easily he was able to pull off a judo throw against Robert Whittaker, took him to the ground and kept him there for a good bit. DDP is a high-level grappler, and he can use his size to increase and elevate that grappling ability. DDP shocked me in the Robert Whittaker fight. I thought that one was very simple, kind of plain as day. Robert Whittaker was the better striker, the more technical fighter. He would pick DDP apart until he eventually broke him. The opposite ended up happening. DDP broke Robert Whittaker, and I was genuinely shocked watching that fight because, Robert Whittaker is one of the best to ever do it, at middleweight. And the only reason that he didn't hold undisputed gold for an extended period of time was because of Israel Adesanya. I mean, if there was no Izzy, Robert Whittaker goes down as a top 3 middleweight ever, maybe? I mean, who's beating him all those years that he only lost to Izzy? I mean, he beat Yoel Romero, he beat Jacare Souza, he was beating everybody. So to see him get dominated in the way he did kind of opened my eyes to the fact that DDP is so much more than just a blitzer. That's what his game is rooted in, but his uncontrolled chaos is where he thrives in. He has the ability, unlike most fighters, to thrive in uncontrolled chaos, and that's what makes DDP so special. He takes the fight to you, brings you out of your comfort zone, and draws you into his. And once you start fighting DDP's fight, you've lost, and that's exactly what happened to Robert Whittaker, and it's also what happened to Sean Strickland. Even though Sean Strickland landed more shots in that fight, and you can make an argument that he should have been given the nod, especially considering he was the champion, DDP fought his fight. He was moving forward, blitzing and attacking for essentially all of the 25 minutes of that fight. So yeah, DDP fought his fight, made Sean Strickland fight within DDP's comfort zone, and DDP was awarded the decision due to the forward pressure and what the judges thought was more power behind his punches. Do I agree with it? I'm not really sure. I'd have to watch that one back. It's a conversation for another day. Nonetheless, DDP is very good at making you fight his fight. And when Israel Adesanya doesn't fight his own fight, I mean, we saw what happened against Sean Strickland. That was horrible. Israel Adesanya was essentially trapped against the cage for the entirety of that fight, and Sean just controlled him with jab, jab, cross. Sean moved forward, jab, jab, cross. Threw a lot of teep kicks, body kicks to feel out the range and prevent Izzy from ever closing the distance. But Sean made Izzy extremely uncomfortable in that fight. And that's DDP's path to victory, certainly. If DDP can implement his own style and force Izzy to fight out of a shell on the cage for the entirety of the fight, Izzy will lose. Izzy can do great things off of his back foot, but only when he is ever so often fighting off of his back foot. Izzy is good at countering, but only when he has momentum already in the fight. If Izzy's moving back and circling the octagon, creating angles for himself to strike, that's a different story. But when he just shells up, like he did against Pereira, like he did against Sean Strickland, he ends up getting overwhelmed. So if DDP comes forward with that signature blitz and makes Izzy fight his fight all 25 minutes, DDP could very well win this fight and do so however he wants. But that is a major, major but. We have never seen Israel Adesanya look so lackluster, look like he didn't belong in the octagon in the way he looked against Sean Strickland. That is not the Israel Adesanya I or anyone is used to seeing. And the reason for that is Izzy's one of the most talented strikers to ever grace the sport of martial arts, guys. Israel Adesanya, his technical ability. Just imagine this. Imagine this. Alex Pereira, he has all of the mentality. He has the mind over you. He has 3 victories over you. He is living in your head. Everyone thinks he's your kryptonite. He's proven that he is your kryptonite in the octagon. He is arguably the best striker all around of all time with the most overwhelming knockout power, pound for pound. I mean, what Alex Pereira has done in martial arts is unrivaled. On top of all of that, on top of Alex Pereira's technical ability, on top of his power and his mindset, he's so much bigger than Israel Adesanya. Do you guys understand how big Alex actually is? That's why he finds such success at 205. He's huge. Israel Adesanya went in the cage and knocked him out cold, slept him through pure technique. Israel Adesanya's timing is unlike anything I've ever seen. I mean, you watch his knockouts. I mean, when he knocked out Robert Whittaker, it wasn't just brute force. It wasn't brute force. He lured Robert Whittaker into the trap and caught him with a counter hook after reading Robert Whittaker's motions. If you watch that knockout over Paulo Costa looked like a fish out of water in that fight. Israel Adesanya was better in every single way. Israel Adesanya found a way to lure Paulo Costa into the range, and the shot he landed wasn't actually incredibly power. It didn't have everything behind it, but what it did have was timing and speed. I mean, Israel Adesanya, that left hook that he knocked Paulo Costa out with glanced off of Paulo's temple. Nonetheless, Paulo went to sleep. That's because Israel Adesanya is one of the most technical strikers in the history of the sport. Hands down. When I watch Israel Adesanya, I understand that I'm witnessing greatness in terms of his ability to gauge distance, in terms of his ability to mix together punches and kicks, in terms of his ability to download and compute his opponent's abilities and use them against his opponents. Everything he does is a read. Izzy reads your weaknesses and responds. He's a very reactive fighter. So if he can react to DDP's blitzes properly, if he can see through DDP and not get drowned in the pressure, not be overwhelmed by Du Plessis' willingness to come forward, if Izzy can continue to move, create angles, and come out with his gauge for distance that we know he has, I don't think this fight's going to be close. In reality, Prime Izzy is much more talented than Dricus Du Plessis. Prime Israel Adesanya might be the most talented striker to ever fight in the Octagon. Prime Israel Adesanya takes a guy like DDP, a guy who's so reckless in his movements, and knocks him out cold. I have no doubt about that. The Israel Adesanya we saw sleep Alex, Robert Whittaker, Paulo Costa, 100% knocks out Dricus Du Plessis. The question is, Izzy's 35. Was that fight against Sean Strickland the beginning of the end? Because every fighter, if they stick around long enough, has a beginning of the end. So was that Sean Strickland fight Israel Adesanya's beginning of the end? I don't think so. I genuinely don't think so. Izzy got caught drinking and driving leading up to that fight. Must have just been in a bad mental state. I'm going to go with option B, not option A. Option A is that he's washed. He's done. Option B, he had a bad training camp. And that's the option I'm taking. So, if Israel Adesanya comes out as the Izzy we know and love, skill-wise, he's levels above DDP, and he has some of the best takedown defense ever. The only times we've ever seen Izzy really succumb to wrestling is when he moved up and fought at 205. This is 185. This is Izzy's comfort zone. And if he comes out as the style bender we know and love, I have no doubt in my mind he is putting Dricus Du Plessis to sleep. Give me Israel Adesanya by knockout. That's my official pick for the main event at UFC 305. If Izzy comes out and looks like he did against Sean Strickland, he will lose. But when Izzy comes out as the style bender we all have learned to appreciate, we all love watching, Israel Adesanya will win by KO.